Hi everyone. This episode I thought that I would talk about landlords. So pretty much most people I know rent their house and landlords can be a nightmare. So I thought I would start off by saying my landlord story from, it was about like 7 years ago now, 7 years I think, well over 7 years, because we moved in January 2015, and it was me and my husband when we were dating. Well, first we weren't even dating, we were in a relationship and we're moving in, and finding a flat to stay in, and we found a tiny one bed flat for £320 a month. So cheap, small flat, which is what we needed, because I was working, he wasn't at the time, so we needed something that we could afford. And we went to view it in the December, everything went fine, we got the keys in the January, moved in. Everything seemed fine until we noticed there was no hot water, and we noticed the windows were leaking and there was a slug infestation in the kitchen because it was like really old and hadn't been cleaned, and it was like holes in the wall, and it was awful because, stupidly enough, I didn't open the cupboards in the kitchen when we went to view it. Things got weirder. A month or so later, we're like, we can't stay here, it's freezing cold, there's no hot water. It was awful. So we started the process of moving out, and we arranged to meet the landlord after. This was after months of saying, this needs fixed, this needs fixed, this needs fixed. And he came to the house, and we're in the process of moving out, so there's stuff everywhere. And he walks around, and he came in a suit. He didn't wear a suit when we were moving in or getting the keys. He came in a suit, and he's like walking around the house with his wee clipboard. And he was like, well, if I wasn't working, I would have this place spotless. And he was just very rude and arrogant and wasn't listening to what we were saying. We launched a complaint against him, and we handed the keys back 6 months later because that was the shortest lease we could have. Then things started to get weird. So I had Snapchat, and I started noticing that he was viewing my Snapchat stories, which was weird, so I blocked him. He then started following my Instagram, so I blocked him. He then started following me on Snapchat again. He then started looking at my Facebook stories, so then I blocked him. I found several accounts that he kept on following me on. Few years later, and I say years, me and Mikey were engaged, and we were going to get our previous flat that we had. So they asked for a reference. So I was like, well, the only flat that we've had together is this one. And I explained the situation. We moved out very quickly because of X, Y, and Z. They were like, that's fine, but we'll just call him to see if, you upkept with the rent payments, which we always did. And when we went to get the keys for the flat, they said that they actually had to end the call very fast with him because he was talking about me in a very creepy manner, only mentioning me, not mentioning Mikey, just talking about me in a very bizarre way that didn't even link to the rent, which is what they were calling for, that they hung up. And I never got to hear really what they said. She didn't tell me what he said, but that was weird. And then it was a few days later, I got a text message. It's him saying, I can't believe you and Mikey are still together. You're a very wonderful lady. Congratulations and good luck on your marriage. And I was like, that's weird. Years later, he is still finding me on various different accounts. And this was like 7 years ago. So that is my creepy landlord story. So I thought I would go on Reddit and see what Reddit posts there are about landlords. And this one very much I connected with. So it's, am I the asshole for putting an incriminating to-do list, in inverted commas, on my wall when my landlord showed my apartment? My landlord is kind of a slum landlord, and I'm moving out over it. He was showing the apartment, and I wrote a to-do list on my whiteboard saying, To do, pay bills, rent 700, electric 300, cell phone 62, buy toilet paper, more roach traps, rat traps, chores, change oil, car oil change, move things out of the closet with plumbing leak above, laundry, hand wash, blazers, buy mum birthday gift and card, follow up on repairs, roaches, ceiling leak, mold, no hot water, pack for Seattle work trip, work, a bunch of work tasks listed. I wrote it in permanent marker, figuring he might try and wipe off parts that mention roaches and water leaks and shit, and it can still come off with an alcohol wipe. And whenever he showed it, I think people noticed it because no one has been interested in the apartment. He also noticed and told me to take it down, and I ignored his messages. Yesterday he came by with a friend and asked me if I could remove the whiteboard. And I said, maybe after work, I'm going to need it for this afternoon's meetings, and I really didn't say more. He was trying to say something else, and it was in the middle of the workday, and having tours come by was already an interruption, and I need to get back to work. Am I the asshole for leaving that sign in my apartment? It actually reminds me of, where did I see it? I think I saw it on Facebook, and it was this guy that was asked to do a virtual tour of his apartment. This was during COVID, and he filmed himself and going, here's the ant traps because we have an ant infestation that the landlord's not doing something about. Here's this that needs repaired. Oh, this door doesn't close properly. Oh, this floorboard is like loose. Oh, this, that, and the next thing. And it went on and on and on. And he's like, oh, the neighbors are such and such. And I thought it was absolutely brilliant, because when you're viewing a place to stay, you never really get a true feel for it. You don't know what repairs need done, because sometimes you can't see them until you're actually living in the place. Like, what was it that we never noticed in this house? It was something really bizarre that I would never thought about. Ah, that was it. Around the toilet, there was like a ledge that kind of covered the under the sink in the back of the toilet kind of thing. And when you sat on it, because it was too high and it had sharp edges, it jagged you in the butt. And we never noticed that until we used the toilet. And I'm like, this is really inconvenient. But you wouldn't have noticed it. And you wouldn't notice, like, what does this person have, like rats and stuff like that. You wouldn't notice that when viewing an apartment. Someone said, not the asshole. If that's all truthful, tenants should know what sort of landlords they're getting. And if he's losing tenants because he's not doing his job, then it's on him. And that is so true. You don't know what a landlord's like. You go view a place, and if the landlord's showing you, or it could be an agent, for all, like, you don't know who this person really is. You don't know if they're actually the landlord or they work for the landlord. You don't know what that landlord's like. And I think we should totally have truthful, reviews of landlords that the landlords can't take down, and tenants for that matter. I can't remember, was it in America? I saw a program, and basically it was like landlords could look up how many times you miss paying rent or something like that. And I know that kind of does with a credit check, but like they could look up what type of tenants they were, if they've been evicted and stuff like that. And I think that it should go in both ways, because I can see it from both sides. You can have like that program in the UK, Nightmare Tenants, Slum Landlords. I mean, it goes both ways. I am not a nightmare tenant. I take care of my properties, and I really hate people that don't pay rent on purpose when they can pay rent and they destroy the house. I just think that's utterly disrespectful. Am I the asshole for calling my landlord a creep? I, 24 female, have recently moved into a new town to complete my postgraduate. It was pretty daunting, but after 6 months I started to settle in. My landlord, 40-ish male, was a bit weird when I first signed the lease. He kept on making offhand comments about me bringing home different guys each week. Of course he didn't say this explicitly, but heavily implied it. I just brushed it off and kept moving, because whether I use my home to pull all-nighters like I intend to, or use it for one-night stands, is up to me. To make matters weirder, my neighbour, 60-ish female, is very good friends with my landlord and doesn't approve of me moving into the area. For info, it is a rather mature area, so I'm bringing the average age down. The problem came 4 days ago when my landlord requested a formal inspection with rather short notice. He wanted to inspect the very next day. I obviously rejected because it was too short notice, and I suggested a date a week later. The request included something about me having a dog. The lease didn't allow dogs. I've got a West Highland Terrier only a month after signing. Low shedding and small, so couldn't cause much trouble. I don't know how he found out, but I soon realised how. Turns out my neighbour had been complaining to my landlord about my dog, about how he is very loud, and she can see him ruining the property. This is obviously an exaggeration and borderline lies because he is very quiet and obedient. All came to a climax when I saw my landlord and the neighbour peeking over the fence yesterday. Turns out my neighbour invited my landlord over to peek into my house after I denied the initial request. When I spotted him recording, I started yelling at him and calling him a creep. He sped off quickly after that, but my neighbour started screaming back at me, calling me a belligerent asshole, and that when I get evicted, it would serve me right for bringing home guys every week. I hadn't had a single guy over in 3 months. Don't know what she was on about. And getting that annoying dog. Am I the asshole? Okay, so, wow. The lease didn't allow dogs and you got a dog, so you're in breach of your tenancy agreement. So, and you got the dog a month after signing the lease, so you knew it was against the lease and you got a dog anyway. But, oh my god, no. Yeah, you're the asshole here. You're the asshole. And calling him a creep. Okay, I get that I'm like leaning over the fence and recording and shit like that. That is a bit weird. That is a bit weird. I will grant you that. But you're in the wrong. Also, I think it's 24 hours notice they have to give for an inspection. So if they give you notice and it's 24 hours, so let's say the email came in at 3 p.m. and they've requested a 5 p.m. the next day inspection, that's within their right. The 24 hours notice is what they have to give here. You're the asshole. What an astonishing amount of blame shifting here. You broke the terms of the lease. That doesn't make your landlord a creep for investigating. You're the asshole, depending on the lease agreement and what is written in the terms of how much notice your landlord should give for inspections. You could be not the asshole for this. However, you are the asshole for breaching your obligation. It doesn't matter if your dog is small, quiet and obedient. You still got it, even though your contract says no dogs. Yeah, I don't get why people think, oh, well, if it says no dogs, it only means like big dogs. If it says no pets, it means no pets. You can't have any pets. If it says, you know, we have a cat, so when we were looking to move into our place, all of our places that we've had, we say we have a cat, and does this property allow cats? And if it's a no, we don't go and view that property, we don't move into that property. You know, if we wanted a dog or cat, I remember when I lived with my ex, we wanted a cat, which is the cat I've got now, and we contacted the letting agency and said, can we have a cat? And they said yes, but you had to pay, I think it was extra to go onto your deposit and sign an agreement saying anything that's caused by the cat we had to pay extra for, or something like that. And then we were allowed to get the cat. Someone says, I guess it depends on where you live. Where I am, the landlord will try and say no pets in their leases, but Ontario laws don't actually let them do that. They are allowed to prohibit you from getting a pet, even though they aren't allowed to prohibit you from getting a pet, even though they put no pets in leases. That's quite interesting, actually. I didn't know that changed from where you live. Like, you could have, your landlord can't stop you having pets. I didn't know that was a thing. Someone put, dude, you're the asshole. Fuck landlords forever, but you can't blatantly violate your lease and not expect repercussions. Welcome to reality. That's very true. I mean, the comments, I completely forgot to even think about that. The comments that they were making about having guys over all the time, that is a bit weird. I mean, it would be different if you were like a prostitute or something. That's a bit different. But if you're having guys round or whatever, your landlord can't stop you doing that. So yeah, at least we found an asshole one. Oh, am I the asshole for not opening the door on time while the landlord's husband was waiting outside? Opening the door on time. Okay, background. I, male 25, recently moved to Sydney for work. Barely knowing anyone in any suburb, I moved into an affordable shared house with a private room. Tenants including the landlord and her husband, 2 other guys in separate rooms, and me. So, today morning I felt lazy and sat at home all day and decided to watch Netflix. I wore headphones, which were noise cancelling. I only got out of my room if I needed the toilet or to grab a snack. Around midday, I get a feeling of knocking sounds, but felt someone else would get the door. Minutes later, it's doors banging noises, so I took off my headphones and got out of the room to check. By the time I got out and started heading towards the main door, the landlord comes out of her room, glares at me annoyingly, and opens the door. Turns out it was her husband, so I silently went back into my room. A little context. The landlord has some issues with me for reasons I don't get. Apparently she complained that I looked at her the wrong way when I was picking my lunch to head off to work. She told me to minimize talking to her. She also asked me to minimize time I spent in the kitchen. She's Asian, so whenever I try to ask her what I did wrong, she says something which I don't understand. Like, even if it's a basic question, like asking her where the trash bin / mop is. She thinks I'm complaining about something. She set household rules which I follow regularly, but I have noticed that neither she nor the other tenants follow. Despite all that, I try to mind my own business. So after the husband comes back in, I get a text minutes later from her accusing me of locking her husband outside. When I told her I barely got out of my room, she thinks I'm lying and I deliberately didn't go to the door. After apologizing, if she thinks that, she says this is my second warning and I'm making it difficult for other tenants and that no one welcomes me. Being new to Sydney, barely with any friends / or contacts, and having lived in private rooms with others and having no issues previously, this annoyed the fuck out of me. What is even more ironic is she claims that she has helped me many times when I've never seen her do so. In fact, have had her demand me to do the dishes for someone else, and in fact yelled at a family friend when he was helping me move. I've already made my mind up in moving as soon as my contract ends, 2 months left, and even told her husband, who was the person who had advised the listing in the first place. Even though my parents are telling me to ignore this and move on, the dumb, low self-esteemed overthinker in me can't take this accusation as her complaints screw up my mental health. So am I the asshole for this? I could not live like that. I could not live like that at all. No, he's not the asshole. Why didn't she go answer the door? If it's her husband, you go answer the door. Wow. First comment on this one that I can see is live-in landlords are usually just petty power trips. They're like HOAs, which I think are homeowner associations. I don't have that in the UK, not that I've heard of. If they had a room in your house, just do what you got to do and get out ASAP. Not the asshole from what you've described. Sounds like she has some insecurities. Wow. Not the asshole. So to summarize, the landlady already hates your guts for some reason and blames you for locking out her husband, which wasn't even the case. So how are you the asshole here again? Wow. I could not live like that, and I could not live with my landlord. That just sounds like hell to me. How do people do that? I mean, a house share, I think I find difficult enough, but a house share with the landlord living in it, couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. I'll need to read some Am I the Asshole tenants, like, stories. So get landlord talking about tenants, because I think that's only fair. But wow. I mean, our landlord, I don't think was that bad. Our landlord now isn't that bad. I think it's just normal landlord thing where it's obviously a business. It's a business buying and renting out houses. It's a business, obviously, and they want to cost cut, and you know, things aren't a priority because they're not living there. But yeah, whew, that one sounds bad. But don't break your lease, because then you're not in the wrong. The second you break your lease, you're in the wrong, and then you know they can get you out basically. So yeah, landlords, a difficult one. They're always seen as the bad ones, and definitely in that one they are.